The stars were wrong. Jasper Vale had flown through enough sectors of the galaxy to trust his instincts, and right now every nerve in his body screamed that something was off. His modified cargo hauler, the Wandering Echo, shuddered as another pulse blast skimmed too close to the starboard hull. "Damn pirates," he muttered, fingers dancing across the navigation console. The readouts flickered in the dim cockpit light, painting his weathered face in shades of amber and red. At 32, Jasper had accumulated more scars than credits, testament to a life spent fixing ships in the frontier zones where law was a suggestion rather than a rule. The next blast wasn't a near miss. Warning klaxons shrieked as the ship lurched violently. Jasper's head cracked against the pilot's seat, stars exploding behind his eyes that had nothing to do with the viewport. The Echo's engines whined in protest, smoke beginning to curl from the ventilation ports. "Come on, sweetheart," Jasper growled, fighting with the controls. "Don't quit on me now." But the ship had other ideas. The primary thrusters died with a pathetic sputter, and suddenly Jasper was falling toward the planet below, a world of violet clouds and crystalline peaks that gleamed like shattered glass in the light of its blue sun. The descent was brutal. Jasper's harness dug into his shoulders as the ship tumbled through the atmosphere, heat shield screaming. He caught glimpses through the viewport, vast forests of what looked like living gemstones, rivers that flowed with liquid light, and spires of architecture so delicate they seemed impossible. Then the ground rushed up to meet him, and the world went black. Jasper woke to silence and pain. His entire body felt like one enormous bruise. The cockpit had crumpled inward, though not enough to crush him small mercies. Through the cracked viewport, he could see he'd carved a long gouge through what appeared to be a crystalline meadow. Fragments of glowing stone littered the crash site, some still smoking from the impact. With a groan that would have embarrassed him if anyone were listening, Jasper extracted himself from the wreckage. His toolkit was miraculously intact, still mag-locked to his belt. His emergency pack had survived too, containing water recyclers, protein bars that tasted like cardboard, and a medkit that had seen better days. The air was breathable. His suit's readouts confirmed that much. Jasper unsealed his helmet and immediately regretted it. The atmosphere was thick, humid, and carried a scent like ozone mixed with something floral he couldn't identify. But it was air, and it filled his lungs without killing him. That's when he heard it, a sound like wind chimes crying. Jasper turned, his hand instinctively going to the plasma cutter on his belt. Not much of a weapon, but better than nothing. The sound came again, weaker this time, from somewhere beyond a cluster of crystalline formations that rose from the ground like frozen music. He should stay with the ship. That was survival protocol. But Jasper had never been good at following protocols. The creature he found huddled beneath. A translucent overhang was like nothing in any xenobiology database he'd ever seen. It was roughly the size of a Terran rabbit, but there the similarities ended. Its body was composed of overlapping crystalline scales that shifted between colors, now deep purple, now brilliant azure, now soft rose gold. 4 delicate legs ended in what looked like tiny prisms, and a tail of pure spun light trailed behind it. But it was the creature's eyes that stopped Jasper cold. They were enormous, multifaceted like gems, and filled with an intelligence that made his breath catch. Right now, they also held pain and fear. "Hey there," Jasper said softly, crouching down slowly. "You okay, little one?" The creature made that wind chime sound again, weaker now. One of its legs was clearly damaged, bent at an unnatural angle. There was a crack running through several of its crystalline scales, and the light inside it pulsed erratically. Jasper had fixed 1,000 broken things in his life. Ships, stations, mining equipment, even a few robots. But this was different. This was alive and fragile, and looking at him with eyes that seemed to see straight into his soul. "I'm going to help you," he said, not sure if the creature could understand, but hoping his tone would convey his intentions. "I promise I won't hurt you." He moved with infinite care, removing his jacket to create a makeshift cushion. The creature flinched when he reached for it, but didn't try to flee, probably because it couldn't. Jasper's hands, calloused and scarred from years of mechanical work, were surprisingly gentle as he lifted the small being. Up close, he could feel a warmth emanating from the creature's crystalline body. And something else, a faint vibration that reminded him of a ship's engine purring. The creature settled against his chest with a soft chiming trill, and Jasper felt something shift inside him, like a door he hadn't known existed suddenly opening. Back at the crash site, Jasper cleared a space in the least damaged section of his ship. He worked by the light of emergency glow sticks, carefully examining the creature's injuries. The med kit wasn't designed for alien physiology, but some principles were universal. Stabilize, reduce pain, prevent infection. He used microtools from his repair kit to fashion a splint for the damaged leg, working with the precision of someone used to handling delicate circuitry. The creature, Jasper found himself thinking of it as Nim, though he had no idea, watched him work with those impossible eyes. "There," Jasper murmured, applying a gel that promoted cellular regeneration in most carbon-based life forms. He hoped it would work on crystalline physiology too. That should help. Nim chimed softly, a sound that felt like gratitude translated into music. Then the creature did something unexpected. It pressed its small head against Jasper's hand, and suddenly his mind was filled with images. Crystal spires reaching toward twin moons, vast halls filled with beings of light and stone, and a face elegant, otherworldly, with eyes like captured starlight and skin that seemed to glow from within. The vision faded as quickly as it came, leaving Jasper dizzy and confused. What was that? He whispered. "Nim," simply curled up in his lap, the light within its body stabilizing to a steady, peaceful pulse. Within minutes, the creature was asleep, its crystalline scales rising and falling with breath that sounded like distant bells. Jasper leaned back against the damaged hull of his ship, one hand absently stroking Nim's warm scales. Somewhere in the distance, he could hear the sounds of this alien world, harmonies that might have been wind through the crystal formations, or might have been something alive. The violet clouds above parted occasionally to reveal stars he didn't recognize. He was stranded on an unknown world with a crashed ship, limited supplies, and now a wounded alien creature depending on him for survival. By any reasonable measure, Jasper should have been terrified. Instead, watching Nim sleep peacefully against his chest, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years: purpose. "Don't worry, little one," he said softly. "I'll keep you safe until we figure out where you belong." In the crystalline palace across the valley, alarms were beginning to sound. A tracking beacon had gone silent, and Princess Velara was about to discover that her most precious companion was missing. But Jasper knew none of this. Not yet. For now, there was only the quiet of an alien night, the warmth of a small creature trusting him with its life, and the beginning of something that would change the fate of two worlds. Jasper woke to the sound of approaching engines. His eyes snapped open, hand immediately going to the plasma cutter at his belt. Years of sleeping in dangerous ports had trained him to wake instantly, fully alert. Nim stirred against his chest, chiming softly in what might have been alarm. "Easy," Jasper whispered, carefully setting the creature on a padded section of his jacket. "Stay quiet." Through a gap in the ship's damaged hull, he could see them, 3 sleek crafts that seemed to be carved from solid light, hovering above the crystalline meadow. They moved with impossible grace, making no sound despite their obvious power. As Jasper watched, they settled to the ground, and figures emerged. They were tall, easily 7 feet, and moved with fluid elegance that made human movement seem clumsy by comparison. Their bodies appeared to be composed of the same crystalline material as the landscape itself, though theirs pulsed with inner light in shades of blue, violet, and silver. They wore what might have been armor, or might have been their natural form. It was impossible to tell where being ended and equipment began. The lead figure raised something that looked like a scanner, sweeping it across the crash site. Then those multifaceted eyes locked onto the wandering echo, and Jasper knew he'd been found. "Well, shit," he muttered. "Human," a voice called out. The words somehow translated directly into his mind with a clarity that made his skull ache. "Exit the vessel. You are trespassing on royal lands." Jasper looked down at Nim, who was watching him with those knowing eyes. "This is going to be bad, isn't it?" The creature chimed once a sound that felt like agreement dot, with a sigh that contained every regret of his 32 years. Jasper unsealed the emergency hatch and stepped out into the violet-tinged daylight, hands raised. "Look, I don't want any trouble. My ship was damaged, and I crashed here. I'm just trying to—" He didn't get to finish. The moment the guards saw Nim peeking out from inside the ship, their demeanor changed entirely. What had been professional caution became something else. Shock, perhaps, or alarm. The princess's companion. One of them breathed, the translated words carrying undertones of disbelief. "He has the Loomis." Before Jasper could process what that meant, crystalline restraints materialized around his wrist's solid light that felt cold and unyielding. 2 guards moved past him to carefully collect Nim, handling the creature with a reverence that bordered on worship. "Wait," Jasper protested. "I found her injured." "I was helping—" "Silence," the lead guard commanded. "You will explain yourself to Princess Velara." The name from his vision. The face that Nim had shown him. "Am I under arrest?" Jasper asked as they marched him toward one of the light crafts. "That will be for Her Highness to determine. Theft of a royal Loomis is punishable by imprisonment or worse." "Theft? I didn't steal anything." But the guards weren't interested in his protests. They loaded him into the craft, which sealed around him with unsettling organic fluidity. Nim was placed in a separate compartment, and through the translucent walls, Jasper could see the creature watching him with what looked like concern. The flight to the palace took less than 20 minutes. But those minutes were enough for Jasper to realize just how deeply he'd stepped into trouble. The landscape below was breathtaking. Entire cities carved from living crystal. Forests where the trees themselves seemed to be made of solidified light, and rivers that flowed with colors he didn't have names for. And at the heart of it all, the palace-dotted rose from the valley floor like a massive geode split open to reveal its treasures. Spires of every color imaginable reached toward the sky, connected by bridges of pure light. The structure seemed to defy physics, with sections that appeared to float unsupported and walls that shifted between solid and translucent. Impressive. Jasper muttered despite himself. The craft settled on a landing platform that materialized beneath it, and Jasper was escorted through corridors that made him feel like he was walking through the heart of a rainbow. Other crystalline beings paused to stare at him, some with curiosity, others with unmistakable hostility. He heard whispers in that mind voice, words he couldn't quite catch, but whose tone was clear enough. He was not welcome here. They entered a vast chamber where the walls themselves seemed alive, pulsing with gentle bioluminescence. At the far end, seated on a throne that appeared to grow from the floor itself, was the being from his vision. Princess Velara was even more striking in person. Her crystalline form shifted through shades of deep purple and silver, and unlike the guards, she wore garments of spun light that flowed around her like liquid starlight. Her face held features that were almost human in their arrangement, but alien in their perfection. High cheekbones, full lips, and eyes that blazed with an inner fire of the purest azure. When those eyes landed on Jasper, he felt like she was seeing every secret he'd ever kept. "Approach," she commanded, her voice in his mind, like music given form. Jasper was pushed forward until he stood at the base of the dais. He tried for a respectful bow, though the restraints made it awkward. "Your Highness." Velara descended from her throne with impossible grace, Nim cradled gently in her arms. The creature chimed happily at her touch, nuzzling against what might have been her neck. "You are the one who took my Loomis," Velara said, her mental voice cool and assessing. "I found an injured creature in the wreckage zone," Jasper replied, meeting her gaze despite every instinct screaming at him to look away. "I provided medical assistance. I had no idea she belonged to anyone, let alone royalty." Velara studied him for a long minute, her head tilting in a gesture that was curiously familiar despite their differences. Most beings would not risk themselves for a small, wounded creature, especially one they did not recognize. "Where I come from, we help those who need it," Jasper said. "Species doesn't really matter." A ripple of whispers ran through the assembled court. Velara's expression remained unreadable, but something flickered in those azure eyes' curiosity, perhaps, or surprise. "You are human," she stated, moving closer until she stood directly before him. This close, Jasper could see the intricate patterns that flowed beneath her crystalline skin, like fractals of living light. "From the Terran sectors. Your kind rarely ventures this far, into the crystalline quartz." "My ship had engine trouble," Jasper said dryly. "Pirates. The crash wasn't exactly planned. Yet here you are, with my most precious companion." Velara reached out, and Nim leaped from her arms to Jasper's shoulder, chirping affectionately and nuzzling against his jaw. The entire court gasped. Velara's eyes widened, genuine shock breaking through her regal composure. "Impossible," she breathed. "What?" Jasper asked, trying not to flinch as Nim's crystalline form pressed against his skin, sending pleasant tingles through his nervous system. "Your Highness," a new voice interrupted. A crystalline being even taller than the guard stepped forward, his form a deep crimson shot through with black veins. "This human has clearly used some form of coercion or technology to silence." "Morvex," Velara commanded, her mental voice sharp enough to make Jasper wince. Her eyes never left Jasper's face. "Tell me, human, what is your name?" "Jasper Vale. I'm a mechanic and pilot, independent contractor." "Jasper Vale," she repeated, as if testing how the syllables felt. "You truly did not know what Nim is?" "I knew she was hurt and needed help," Jasper replied honestly. That was enough. Velara reached out slowly, her crystalline fingers hovering near Jasper's face. "May I?" He nodded, not entirely sure what he was agreeing to for the second time in as many days. Her fingertips touched his temple, cool and electric, and suddenly his mind was flooded with images. He saw himself through her eyes, finding Nim in the wreckage, the gentleness of his hands as he worked to heal her, the way he'd spoken softly to comfort a frightened creature. He felt Velara's panic when Nim's tracking signal had vanished, the sleepless night spent searching, the relief and confusion upon finding her companion safe with a strange alien. When Velara withdrew her hand, Jasper felt oddly bereft, like something vital had been taken away. "You saved her life," Velara said softly, and for the first time, her mental voice carried warmth. "A Loomis is not simply a companion, Jasper Vale. They are soul guides, sacred beings who bond with royalty at birth. When Nim disappeared, I feared... She paused, something vulnerable flickering across her perfect features. "I feared I had lost the only one who truly understood me." "Your Highness," Morlex interjected again, his tone oozing with barely concealed contempt. "Regardless of his intentions, this human has violated sacred law. He must be punished." Must he? Velara turned to face her court, and Jasper saw steel beneath the beauty. This human showed more care for Nim than any of you showed in your search. He risked himself for a creature he did not know, expecting nothing in return. She turned back to Jasper, and a smile played at the corners of her mouth, expression that was both regal and mischievous. I find myself in debt to you, Jasper Vale. That's not necessary, Jasper started, but Velara raised a hand. In our culture, such debts are sacred. I must offer recompense. Her eyes gleamed with something that made Jasper's pulse quicken for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. I offer you sanctuary within the palace as my personal guest and cultural liaison. You will teach me of humans and your worlds, and I will teach you of the Sara and our ways. Your Highness. Morvex's protest was echoed by several other court members. This is unprecedented. A human in the royal household is exactly what we need? Velara interrupted smoothly. The Terran Federation grows in power and reach. Understanding their people could prove invaluable. She looked at Jasper, her expression challenging. Unless you refuse my hospitality? It was a trap, and they both knew it. Refuse, and he'd likely be imprisoned or exiled, with no way to repair his ship. Accept, and he'd be walking into political waters he didn't understand. But Nim chirped happily on his shoulder, and Velara's eyes held secrets that sang to something deep in Jasper's chest. When do I start? He heard himself say. Velara's smile was triumphant and genuine in equal measure. You already have. As guards moved to remove his restraints and escort him to his new quarters, Jasper caught sight of Morvex's expression, cold calculation mixed with barely concealed fury. Whatever game he'd just agreed to play, Jasper had a feeling the rules were far more complicated and dangerous than he could imagine. But when Velara brushed past him, her crystalline form radiating warmth and light, leaving a scent like starlight and distant flowers, Jasper found he didn't entirely care about the danger. Some risks, he was beginning to realize, might be worth taking.